Hi, I'm Sean Hammond with PremierGuitar.com. We're at the 2011 New York Amp Show at the Booyah Amps booth. And we've got Jamie here. Jamie, how's it going?
How you doing? How's it going?
Good. And we have Renee again that we heard from a little on some other videos. So you've got a completely new line of amps here.
Correct.
This is your first amp show. And you have a really unique take on things. Why don't you tell us about it?
Sure. Well, each amp is built on a one-off basis. There's no model amplifier. It's built completely to your specs as a player, whatever you would want. If you want reverb, we can do reverb. If you want an effects loop, tube-driven, no problem. Both of these heads use octal phase inverters for a really high current drive in the output section. You get great power amp overdrive, yet the bass doesn't fall apart at higher volumes. Every single part of the amp is voiced to whatever the player's specification is. Each component value matters. It doesn't matter how long it takes to get it exactly where you want it. We're going to get it right where you want it, and that's the important part to me.
So let's walk through what the process would be like. Does someone calls you up or goes to your website,
Right.
and you just talk over the phone and they can tell you the sound they're hearing in their head, or they can tell you what sort of previous amp model they want to base it on, or whatever?
Correct. I've had people come to me and say, you know, late 70s Angus Young, can you do it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Or, you know, Crossroads Eric Clapton, you know, can you do it? No problem. It all depends on what exactly you're looking for. And what I found out over time is when people come to me with a certain tone that they have in their head that they want to hear, once we start getting into the amplifier, which is just a bare bones, you know, assembly at first, I bring the player over to the shop and we actually sit down and voice the amplifier stage by stage. I jump out certain stages, jump out tone stacks, and we actually voice each stage of the preamp, gain stages, clean stages, drive stages, all individually, all with different components, all with different material components, and it's just something that nobody does. So if you look inside of the amplifier, you won't see, you know, all the same capacitors, all the same resistors, because certain parts of them really, you know, I want them to differ from other parts. I want certain characteristics of certain components, yet I want mellower characteristics of other components, and being able to mix and match those in an amplifier is kind of priceless to me.
Now, having that kind of open-ended design process could be pretty daunting. Where do you start? What's your background in this?
Well, my background is actually, I'm kind of a multi-instrumentalist, and since I was young, I've always had this thing for Hammond organs. So if you don't know electronics when you're bumping around a Hammond organ, you can ruin your day real fast. But what I found out is there were certain mystiques about certain era Hammond organs that made them different from other ones, and it turned out that they used different types of capacitors, and not even different values, just different materials that they were made out of. And that really kind of got me thinking, like, if that's such a great thing with an organ, like, why don't more people do that with a guitar amp? And I see a lot of people using all Mallory caps or all Sprague caps, which are fantastic. But in certain stages, you know, I would like a nice fast preamp with, you know, kind of a gummier power stage, and I can build that, you know, and it can get daunting. Excuse me, but luckily a lot of the players that I deal with have a certain, you know, ideal that they want to chase as far as their sound and everything else like that. And to me, being able to interpret the mumbo jumbo, if you will, of, oh, I want it to sound sweeter, or it's a little too rumbly, or, you know, I can interpret that into electrical terms and kind of, you know, filter out what we don't want, put in what we need, put in what we don't need. You know, sometimes with some people they want more things than, you know, and it's amazing because my years of repairs have actually helped me learn why each amp is different and certain characteristics of each amp that make them stand out over other amplifiers. And being able to integrate a lot of that technology is, you know, something new for me, and nobody's really done that yet. So
It's really cool. So is part of the process also having the customer come in to check it out, and then they say, well, yeah, like you said, I want a more sweeter sound, or darker, whatever?
yeah, and that's a big thing is once I get the initial skeleton of the amplifier constructed, I bring the player over and have them bring over their guitar, their favorite cabinet, everything else like that. And we sit down and we go through certain stages. We'll bring up the treble control and say, okay, this treble's good. I want it a little less sizzly though. And, you know, we can jump some components in and out and we get everything exactly how they want it, which is unique. As far as I know, nobody else is doing that right now. Nobody else can build you exactly what you hear in your head.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the amp we've been hearing all this time?
Sure. This one is number 16. That's the name of it. Each amp is numbered. There's no name. It's a simple channel switching amplifier. The clean channel is only a 2-knob clean channel with a volume and a tone. It's not a typical tone knob that would run in line with the circuit. It works in the negative feedback stage of the preamp. And then on the other side, we have the white channel, which is a little bit hotter. We got some gain in there. We got your master volume on that. The treble pot pulls out for a mid-range boost. So you can get a much more upper mid-range concentration than you would normally be able to get with the tone stack. There's a high cut that exists in the power amp, kind of my little tribute to Vox. And there's a tube-driven effects loop. It's all buffered in the back with separate send and return levels. Everything in the amp is foot switchable, the effects loop, the channel switching, and that's this one.
Now, is this your own personal amp, or was this built for someone else?
This one is my own personal amp. I built this one specifically for the player who wanted a little more than just your basic single channel amp, because a lot of guys are like, oh, that's great, but you know, I love that quote unquote Fender clean channel or something like that, and just we can do it, you know, it's not a problem. And I just built this one for me because it's great to be able to put a pedal in front of one channel and just go straight into the amp with the other channel and not really have to worry about anything else like that.
You mentioned earlier, as a hypothetical, someone saying, can you do late 70s Angus Young or AC/DC? What did you have in mind when you built this? Like, if you could just boil it down.
Well, I wanted a really smooth gain channel, but aggressive when you really picked on it hard. I didn't want it too sizzly. I didn't want it too modern, too high gain. There is, you know, some high gain that you can get out of it. But really, I just had this, you know, kind of sound in my head. This, you know, when I hit a nice high note bend, I want it to be smooth. I want the sustain to be there. I want it to fall out from underneath me. And at high volumes, I want it all to hold together. So I just basically went through the amplifier stage by stage and got it exactly where I wanted it. Changing, you know, cathode bypassing stuff, the type of coupling caps I'm using in certain sections. You know, even if it's the same value, a different material can totally alter the entire tone of the amplifier. So having the time to sit down and be able to do that has really helped me just say I didn't have a certain tone I was looking for. Once I put the amp together, I hear what the soul of the amp is, and then I can kind of adjust to where I want everything after that. You know, and it's, I really don't keep a certain aspect of my mind of what an amp should follow, because you got to break out of the norm.
Okay, Jamie, so next to the head we just heard, you've got a little combo. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, this is it's actually a rebuild of a old PV Classic 30 that a friend of mine had. Gentleman's name is Chris Tamburillo. He plays in a band called Butch's Beard. And he had a certain idea in his mind that he wanted for an amplifier. He was tired of using pedals on the floor, drive pedals and all this other, you know, compressors, and he just wasn't happy with the tone he was getting. So we sat down and we said, well, you know, what exactly are you looking for? And basically he told me he wanted a single volume control, something that would overdrive very easily, possibly at 2 or 3, very low on the volume dial. As minimal of tone controls as you can get, which from the left to the right on that amplifier, we have volume, which is red, treble, which is the gold one. There's a bright switch right next to that. The silver one in the middle is mid-range. There's a mid-boost right next to that. The other gold one is bass, and then the orange is treble. Underneath the pilot light, there's a switch for 3/4 power or full power. It's a 30-watt cathode bias power section. And he wanted certain aspects of Brian May's tone, but he wanted a very aggressive and fast overdrive on the amplifier. So we started from the ground up. We took the amplifier, we completely gutted it out, went over his requirements, like what he was looking for. I listened to him play. And piece by piece, I constructed him an amp from the ground up, and he's absolutely floored by it. I kind of had to beat it out of his hands to get it up here for the weekend. He kind of had certain expectations set, and it just completely blew his face off once he finally heard the amp. So that was a good thing.
Let's get our faces blown off. Let's hear it. Cool. Now I'm intrigued. You mentioned that the buyer of this amp wanted certain aspects of Brian May's tone. Can we kind of hear a little bit of that?
Out of the amplifier, absolutely. Basically, what he was looking for is something where at high volumes, where you can basically kind of just floor the amp, you get that very smooth harmonic. I always refer to the Killer Queen guitar solo. Go ahead, just. You know, it's a mean little amp, and it's definitely tiny, so.
Cool. And then you're leaning against another model here. Tell us about that one.
Another custom one. This is a 60 watt, some would refer to as a lead series amp. High gain, has master volume, has an EQ shift, treble, mid, bass. That's your master volume. This is a presence knob, and that's pretty much what it does. I'll hook it up for you in a second so you can hear exactly what she sounds like. For what I heard in my head when I was building this amplifier was the first Metallica album. That type of amplifier is a dying breed. I kind of wanted to bring it back. There's beautiful mid-range inside of this amplifier. It just never quits. Even at high volumes, it doesn't break apart. It doesn't flub out or anything else like that. This amplifier is mean as hell. This has been the one so far today where people have come in and just been like, oh, what is that? It's what it does, and it does it very, very well. So
cool. Let's mic it up and hear it.
As I said before, the whole point of this album was to, in my mind anyways, revive the whole early thrash metal, super mid-range, great classic sound of late 70s and the early 80s. Randy Rhoads, James Hetfield, that whole thing. Again, I wanted it to sound like that. And that was the whole point from the beginning of the amplifier until where we are right now. Each component was chosen based on the legacy of what that component material was supposed to sound like. So what I've done is I've taken, in certain parts of the amplifier, older components, older wax capacitors, older carbon comp resistors, ones that have drifted on purpose. Because with vintage amplifiers nowadays, the reason they sound so much better now than some of them did back then was because the components have aged. The amplifier is brought into itself and is set, kind of settled in. So I wanted to give that nice old settled in sound to an amplifier that was brand new. All the transformers that I use are all paper bobbin transformers, all custom made to my specs, and you can't find an amp like this anywhere else on the market.
Okay, Jamie, so where can people go to start this process, look into how you might be able to help them realize their ideal amp?
Well, you can give me a call. My phone number is 518-TUBE-AMP. You can also email me at booyahamps@gmail.com. That's BOOYA amps@gmail.com. I have a Facebook page for Booyah Amplifiers that has a bunch of pictures of everything I've done and a lot of testimonial from my customers, people that have been very satisfied with the stuff I've done for them. So I encourage you to go and check it out.
Cool. Thanks for showing us everything and telling us about your unique approach.
Excellent. Thanks very much, guys.
I'm Sean Hammond, and you're watching PremierGuitar.com.